everybody, and welcome back to Misericorde. The last time we left off, we met with the accused, and we saw a strange symbol on the walls, and finally, we are at luncheon. So, without further ado, let's just get right into today's episode. Luncheon passed without much incident. Now that I was no longer expected to sit through extended introductions of myself and others, I could enjoy my food in relative peace. Darcy's cooking was excellent and much appreciated, although I was beginning to realize that the emotional reservoir that eating refilled was shrinking with each passing meal. Part of this, perhaps, was the worried anticipation that someone might casually mention seeing the superior and I walking back from the hospitalum earlier. The amount of secrets I was responsible for already felt unsustainable, but the idea of those secrets coming to light was even worse. I participated in the conversation around the table superficially, just enough to avoid being asked if something was wrong. I was unsure I'd be able to lie and say no. The Bible, of course, has plenty to say about lying. Bearing false witness breaks a commandment. Although in my time locked in a cell, I had read many musings from scholars smarter than I am about whether or not that meant all untruths, or if the commandment was speaking strictly about matters of court. I've told you my views on loose interpretation, but the Bible is inerrant. There is no getting around the fact that the midwives lying to the Pharaoh's men saved many lives, for example. Still, it was difficult to feel like I was acting as selflessly as they did. I felt closer to Augustine than Cassian. The only Augustine I know is Saint Augustine, but there are probably many other Augustines around the world. Still, don't really understand. I wish I did. It would be nice if they gave us like a glossary of terms, so that it's easier for me to know what's being talked about. After luncheon, we all filed out of the rectory to return to our duties. Eustace made a beeline to the stairs up to the library. Even though we had made up after this morning's spat, I felt inclined to keep away from her a bit longer. Catherine slipped out of the rectory before I could ask her about James's story. I must admit, I was relieved to once again have an excuse to avoid that conversation. I get you, Hedwig. I was more interested in the symbol Margaret had shown me, which I feared indicated something far more sinister than I, or the superior, were prepared for. Margaret seemed wholly unperturbed throughout her meal. How? I could not understand it. Just thinking about that twisted shape made me sweat. It had been so close to my cell. How had I never felt it? I think she did every time she talked about demons clawing at her door. It could be that, it may not be that, still, interesting stuff. Had it woven some dark spell on me, and I just hadn't noticed? Was it responsible for who I was? The mistakes I continued to make? The concessions I made without verbal complaint to fit in with these women. The lack of a fight I had put up to the superior as she broke the seal on my cell. Was that thing responsible? These thoughts ran in my mind until I felt as if I had been sprinting in circles for too long. I did my best to shut them out and decided instead to wander down to the cellars, somewhat hopeful that it would keep me out of sight for the afternoon. After all, the cool air of the cellars would perhaps clear my head. Hedwig, would you be so kind as to settle an argument between myself and Marta? I had chosen poorly. Argument? Try this. Is it supposed to smell like that? It must be the sherry. Not you too. It does smell absolutely rank, Adela. Adela was holding a stinking ladle over an opened cask, waving it between our faces with a great deal of indignation. As I told you yesterday, Sister Marta, it smells like this temporarily. It gives the wine its flavor, and you can already taste it in this barrel. Go on. Must I? Better you than I. I'm afraid I might keel over if I inhale much more of this miasma. With trepidation, I took the ladle from Adela's hand and held it up to my lips. The half-finished wine smelled truly foul, enough to make me cough. However, Adela was glaring at me with such determination that I was ever so slightly more afraid of her than the liquid. Closing my eyes, I braved a taste. It was actually not that bad. It was nowhere near as disgusting as the smell. I do agree here, though, that the smell can influence your perception of the taste. If you don't smell the food, it just isn't the same. However, it was clearly not meant for drinking yet, and whatever sweetness I could detect on my tongue was soon covered up by a watery and weak fruit flavor. What is sherry made up of? Which was all soon replaced by the overpowering stench of the ladle and barrel. It's coming together. Unbelievable. See, even half fermented, the power sherry holds is undeniable. How long will it take to, come to its own? It takes several years to properly ferment. This batch is quite young. It only started when I first arrived. I have been dragging Sister Marta into the future. Thank God this isn't the only wine I have to work with. You have my help. Surely you are not rotating all the casks throughout the Solera yourself? Of course not. What's the Solera? All of these barrels, they have to move. You bottle some of the oldest wine from the bottom cask, and then refill with some of the youngest, then rotate that back to the top. It keeps the quality consistent. Oh, that's actually interesting winemaking knowledge. And it means that some of the oldest batch is in every bottle. She took a moment to spoon a ladle into the liquid and try to sip herself. She smacked her lips and looked thoughtful. That sounds arduous. Too right. Helps to have some unruly younger sisters around to threaten with manual labor. I am always happy to help with winemaking. Believe me, I know you are. So, does Darcy grow grapes too? Oh no. I use some fruits from the garden to flavor the other wines, but the grapes are from the village. The slope of the Thurs is good for vineyards, but it gets too cold up here around the abbey proper. They only recently finished the last harvest and brought it to us, hence the Solera. There certainly is an awful lot of work to do around here. It sounds like... Thank you for saying so. Some people don't appreciate just how complicated our work can be. Speaking of, I should really tend to my next task. Sister Hedwig, would you walk with me? I bowed my head to Marta, who responded in kind, even though she was preoccupied with sealing up the test cask. Adela walked me back through the rows of wine barrels and up the stairs, striding with purpose. I struggled to keep up as she crested the staircase into the halls around the cloister. Sister Hedwig, how are you finding Tor Abbey? Well, I'm not used to it yet, obviously. Yes, it is obvious. I hope you do not mind me saying. Not at all. I'm also new here. And I can tell that you are suffering in the same ways I suffered. Oh, was I? Was I suffering in the same way as Adela? I nearly blurted that out, but managed to restrain myself. You are anxious. You are confused. You are eager to please everyone you meet. I was the same for a while, but you must not be afraid to stand your ground when you feel you must. Oh, that is such good advice from Adela. I don't know what you mean. You are doing it right now, Sister Hedwig. You know exactly what I mean because I am describing you as you are acting for me as we speak. What is it about? What is this about, Adela? Have I offended you? Only my sense of justice. I want what is best for you, Sister Hedwig. Honestly, she is giving me similar vibes to Catherine, as in Catherine with a C. I want to see you thrive. Do not retreat into your shell like Sister Flora does. She has an excuse. She is not yet 20. But you are nearly 30, are you not? Tell me, Sister Hedwig, was the sherry really so bad? It was quite disgusting. Ha, of course it was. Sister Marta is going to ruin all of it before it is due. But surely it couldn't be anything but foul midway through the aging process? I'm no expert, but I thought wine took time. It would taste strange no matter what, but the taste I had after you, it was all wrong. I have worked on many wines and have learned how to taste how wine is going to taste. And that sherry, it is not coming together as you described. It was more of a guess. It was a lie, a polite one, but untrue all the same. I'm sorry, but shouldn't you be telling Marta, not me? Oh, I will be marching back to Marta in just a moment, believe me, Sister Hedwig. But I want to help you as well. Never be afraid to speak your mind. The others will respect that much more than endless acquiescence. I find that hard to believe. See, you are already catching on. No, I'm not practicing. I just don't understand. I don't want to fight everyone. Who said anything about fighting? I am not saying you should be contrary. I am saying you should not pretend to be someone you are not. Be Hedwig. You are not the first person to tell me this today, believe it or not. Margaret did too, didn't she? All the more reason to take me seriously. Please. I have been in your position before. I have felt lost and overlooked. But I became much happier when I stopped trying to please everyone. I had no way to explain to Adela that beyond being thrust into an entirely new world of social interaction, I was also trying my best to ingratiate myself to everyone for a reason. Butting heads with Sister Angela was more than enough conflict for me. And given that I was here to unmask a murderer, I felt that drawing too much attention to myself was unwise. Being the newcomer surely made me visible enough without tempting fate. But there was more to it than that. Quite simply, I had no idea who Hedwig was. What? Anyway, I have other business to attend to, and then I will be giving Sister Marta a piece of my mind. And then by supper, we will be friends again. This is how things work. You must be strong. I will try. See that you do. I am on your side, Sister Hedwig. Adela gave me a surprisingly firm pat on the shoulder and left. Is Hedwig not going to explain what she means by how she doesn't know exactly what Hedwig really is? I feel like it could be one of two things, you know? Like, just being lost as you are growing. And, well, I would still say that nearing your 30s, you are still growing. That actually, to be honest, no matter what age you are at, you are still growing. But Mimi, she could also be referring to, you know, how she has alluded to before, that she has been pretending to be an anchoress all this time. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. I stood in the corner we had been conversing in for a while. I had found Adela's penchant for romantic language somewhat charming up until now, but I did not appreciate these trickly platitudes. I was bouncing between embarrassment and fury. Oh my. Well, Hedwig seems to kind of have a hot temper, and also seems to take things quite personally from a lot of people, like that time with Eustace and then now with Adela. You can tell Adela's speaking out of concern for Hedwig, but Hedwig's just really concerned with how she is perceived by other people and probably also how she's unhappy with the way she has been portraying herself. Oh my, such real problems we all have. I needed a moment to myself. It was not yet even close to supper time. The days here, it seemed, would be excruciatingly long until I settled into a routine. As I calmed down, I thought about where I should go next. I had already bothered Eustace enough for one day. I didn't want Darcy to get sick of me, and I had just left the cellars. Moreover, I hadn't a clue where anyone would be at this time of day. Margaret, Catherine, Moira, anyone really. I yearned for the comfort of my cell. At least there, my tasks had been clear as crystal. Around this time, I'd usually be settling in to copy down some Bible pages after reflecting on some scripture. It was almost automatic, but that kind of life is so... Well, I think it's a little sad, but to each their own. If this is what Hedwig feels comfortable with, then who am I to say it's not right for her? But at the same time, it also, boxes you into a routine, and you just go with the flow of what's been comfortable so far. You never step out of your comfort zone to explore something else. Perhaps I'd while away the evening, illuminating a page in gold leaf. With a start, I remembered the last page I transcribed before leaving the cell. The book I'd thrown out of the window. Surely it'd be weathered by the elements by now, but I felt a strong urge to go and reclaim the half-finished tome. If nothing else, it would be a comforting reminder of the last time I had a clear sense of purpose. Oh no, I'm kind of scared that there might be something in the book that wasn't there before. That would be kind of terrifying. It wasn't a terribly long walk to the side of the building my old cell window had faced. I'm scared too because that's where we found the symbol. There was no path on that side of the building. However, that terrain was uneven and the grass quite tall. It was strange seeing the buildings from this side. In the courtyards and cloister, everything looked flat and mathematical, but here the earth rose and fell like waves around the stone. There was an immense forest not far from the abbey on this end, and my heart leapt into my throat as I remembered the mysterious figure I'd seen standing not far from where I was searching now. I recognized my window high up on the wall. There actually wasn't many openings on the side of the building. Most of the glassed windows faced inward towards the cloister. Which one is her cell, I wonder? The book was not here. A chill ran up my back. I had seen it in the morning after my tantrum, clear as day. Was I truly going mad? Had I hallucinated a book before the ghost and gulped? I scanned the tall grass around me. Maybe it had slid down a hill or bounced in a fashion I had not noticed. Perhaps I was simply looking in the wrong spot. If it is missing, then logically someone must have picked it up before and left. Surely there are no such things as ghosts. Try as I might, I could not find it. Unless it had been swallowed by the earth, the book had been moved. Who in their right mind would want a half-finished Bible, soaked by rain and tainted with my own bile no less? Okay, that's actually a very good point. Then my foot slipped. Oh, I rolled down the hill with a yelp. I tumbled several times, leg over head and over end. Hey, don't laugh, it was quite terrifying. What if I had broken a bone or fallen into some inescapable hole? Oh, that is terrifying. I feel scared, but I also feel sorry for Hedwig. I came to rest against a small tree. I scrambled to my feet, using a trunk for leverage. I spat a little grass out of my mouth and groaned as I realized my habit was covered in dirt and grass stains. What a mess. It was then that I saw something highly curious. A piece of fabric was dangling from a branch on a tree I was leaning against. It was a small strip of black cloth. I carefully detached it from the sharp bit of branch it was snagged on. That would mean... Oh no, no! The figure I had seen that night outside my window was real. No, that is scary, that is scary, that is terrifying. I felt some small amount of relief that I was at the very least not completely mad. I wonder though how that piece of black cloth would actually mean that figure that she saw exists. Because, I mean, black cloth could literally be anyone. The sisters wear black clothes, so could be anyone. To be honest, my first thought was actually that what if it was Catherine with a C who escaped from the abbey and her clothes had snagged on the branches, but who knows. But then I doubled back. Could a ghost or demon not take a corporeal form? The monster I had seen the night before had certainly been solid. Neither of these ideas were particularly comforting. What's more, I certainly wouldn't make any headway on the mystery stranded out here. I stuffed this clue into my white stocking and began to hike myself back up to the hill to the abbey. I had not fallen that far afield, but it was still quite a steep trek. I decided I would walk around the other way from whence I'd come, just to complete my impromptu tour of the outside of the abbey. Is she allowed to leave the abbey? I'm actually not sure if nuns are allowed to leave the abbey. It was actually a little more even and flat the further I ventured around this side, which was a relief. I was able to stick close to the wall. I didn't feel like falling down any more hillocks that afternoon. Hello. Oh, that is kind of scary. I got scared. To be honest, seeing Darcy's name popped up there was kind of scary too. I jumped. I hadn't noticed a little square window low on the outside wall of the building, through which I could just barely make out Darcy's face. Goodness, you've startled me. Hello, Darcy. What you doing out there? Oh, I felt like going for a walk. I hadn't seen the abbey from this side just yet. Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Yes, just a whim, I suppose. It's giving me a sense of place, though. Did you fall over? Yes, I did. Oh, no! Oh, be nice. No, sorry, I'm not trying to be cruel. It's just that we've all done it. You've all fallen down this side of the hill? It happens to me all the time when I go hunting for mushrooms and so on. Ah, I see. To be honest, this is kind of giving me a little bit of a clue that there's something about the structure of this abbey that perhaps one side being steep was on purpose. You kind of hear it sometimes when buildings are constructed on top of like what was once something else, and so there are irregularities in, well, the architecture or the structure of the building, essentially. That's what I'm saying. So it's an interesting point, and I'm sure it's something that will play an important role in the future. That's what I think. I bet it looked rather funny when you fell, though. Did you roll? Yes. Good. That's how you stay safe. Really now? Yes, if you go stiff, you'll break something. Laura did that once. Oh no. It was fine. She's young. Her bones are supposed to break. Good for the constitution. No, I don't think so. But it's true that your bones grow stronger. Well, I'm not sure if they're supposed to, but better to break something young so it can heal. That's right. Well, what are you up to? What room are you in? Oh, this is just a funny little window in one of the halls. Oh, I suppose I'm close to the cloister on this end? That's right, and above the croft. Fascinating. Buildings are strange. Anyway, I was just on my way back from picking some bitter vetch for the stores. Oh, should I be worried about our stockpiles? Oh, not at all, but it just never hurts to have some, just in case. That's wise. Well, I should be getting on. I should quite like to be back within the walls. Absolutely. She smiled widely and then disappeared from the window. The rest of the walk back was uneventful. When I finally made it around to the cloister, I let out a weary sigh. My clothes had only just been washed, and I'd already made a mess of them, and the tumble down the hill had left me feeling a little queasy and out of sorts. Hedwig? Oh! Catherine, hello. You look like you fell asleep in a field. Are you all right? Oh yes, I just took a little fall. Well, at least it was down something grassy and not the stairs. Oh, she's bringing it back up again. Don't be cruel. I stomped my foot and puffed up at Catherine, who looked bewildered. Excuse me? Would it be funny if I fell down some stairs, Would it be amusing if I broke my neck because I hadn't used stairs as often as you? Oh dear, Hedwig. Hedwig, you're being a touch dramatic. Oh, am I? Am I being... Oh no, did she vomit again? I had gulped up a little bit of black bile once more. I felt dizzy. Hedwig? Hedwig! She reached out to stop me from collapsing. Oh dear, overstimulated again today. I gurgled something unintelligible in response. Catherine hoisted me to my feet and began to lead me towards the stairs. Her nose wrinkled. We need to get Moira to take a look at you again, I think. That doesn't seem normal. It was perfectly normal for me. It's not, I really don't think so. As I half-heartedly walked with Catherine up the stairs, she declined to crack a joke this time, and that's good. I really don't think Catherine's really that cruel of a person. I reasoned that my propensity for spilling black bile all over the place was just my punishment for breaking a lifelong promise to God. It didn't matter how noble the cause the Superior had thrust upon me was. I had been an anchoress, and now I wasn't. This is just how it's going to be, I'm afraid. What, the vomiting? This is exactly what I was talking about. You're acting hysterical. I broke a sacred vow. We had arrived at the dorms. Catherine plopped me onto the bed, but didn't let me go. Instead, she squeezed my face with her hand and bent down to peer at me. I'm no doctor, but you look ill. Just like she had done when we first met, she licked her thumb and rubbed it roughly against my face. And dirty, honestly. I hiccuped again, and a little more bile oozed out of my mouth onto my hood. Stay put. I'm getting Moira. She let me fall onto the pillow and left in a hurry. I groaned loudly, feeling more frustrated than unwell at this point. I closed my eyes, just for a moment. You know, there's a thing about how when you move into a new environment, you can get sick because there are different germs and bacteria, I guess. Or maybe, Hedwig's just homesick because she misses her cell. Hedwig? Moira and Catherine were looming over me, looking concerned. Moira... Oh dear, still feeling a bit off, are we? She was acting very out of sorts, and then coughed, all that up again. Hedwig, is this more or less bile than you expelled yesterday? Less, I think. That would make sense to me. She's fine, Catherine. She's only adjusting. It's not, you know... Moira let out a gentle chuckle. It's not the Black Death, Catherine. Unless you've got some buboes you haven't told us about, Hedwig. Buboes? Moira reached behind my arms and rummaged around. It was so sudden that I wasn't able to react. Oh, I guess swellings? I was even more taken aback when she moved her hands between my legs and squeezed my inner thighs without warning. Nothing. Catherine, you really mustn't worry. She's just not used to the air outside her cell. Bodies react strangely to changes in their environment. It's highly normal. What did I say? What did I say? This was humiliating. I felt like livestock being inspected for ticks. She was very weak. Not to mention, well, a little out of sorts. Her attitude was very strange. Catherine, I think sometimes you may just have that effect on people. Catherine looked affronted, but Moira simply took her by the shoulder and led her towards the door. She just needs a little rest again. I'll bring you some more of Darcy's mint later, Hedwig. And if you pile your clothes up, I can see to it that they get washed. I grunted in appreciation. Moira gave me a little smile and ushered Catherine out of the dormitory. I shut my eyes, but unlike the last time I had expelled all this goo, I wasn't particularly tired. I felt humiliated, stretched thin, and emotionally exhausted, but not tired. My mind was running in circles, in fact. I opened my eyes once more. If I really was to rest in my room for the afternoon, I should make something of my time. I scrambled out of bed to strip down as Moira had requested, bundling my habit up into a ball and leaving it next to the door. The shred of cloth I recovered from outside was still in my stocking. I hid it under my pillow for safekeeping. I got down on all fours to reach under the bed. Perhaps now was the perfect time to read that play Catherine the First had left for me. Have you ever read Medea? No, wasn't it supposed to be Catherine the Second? Was it not? I'm sure she was Catherine the Second, though. Did I read it wrong? I did not make it through the whole play in that one sitting, I will admit. I found the whole thing intriguing, although extremely confusing. I fear that I simply didn't have the room in my head for some of the knowledge required to enjoy it fully. These pagan gods and foreign ideals, they confused me. I assumed that there was a point to all of it that Catherine might have been able to teach me, but without her guidance, I felt lost. To be frank, the section I read was perfectly ghastly to my understanding. A jilted wife plots to kill her husband's new lover, and the new lover's father along with her. I supposed they didn't have Bible scripture to turn into those days, so it was an interesting window into a world before the word. Sometimes I forget that pagan gods and basically that religion existed before Christian times, but I also know that in Rome, I think it was towards the end of the empire, maybe it's somewhere in between, that the Christian god was pretty much, how do you say this? It was wrong to believe in it, right? And it was probably punishable by death. But actually, fun fact, that the emperor, was it an emperor or was it just a king of Rome at that time? Well, I think it's an emperor. He had a dream about winning the war, and he basically said that if he won a war, he will convert his religion because he saw some Christian symbols in his dream, something like that. Anyway, I don't really buy it, but he probably wanted to change his religion, I don't know. But it was interesting to know that the Roman Empire turned from paganism to Christianity all in one swoop. How fickle religion can be. However, when the heroine's thoughts wandered to murdering her own children in kind to prove the cause, as much pain as she possibly could, I feel like there is an error in this sentence. I closed the book. It was too horrible to think about. I'm not sure what I had expected, but in my memory, Catherine had been so excited to share this with me, suggesting that I would appreciate its contents. What on earth could she have thought of me to assume that I would have enjoyed this, of all tales? I wasn't angry, I suppose. It was just a story after all. I just had no clue what to make of it. Really, it hurt most that Catherine wasn't around to explain what she had been thinking when she planned to give me this. I'm sure she would have had a good answer. I did eventually doze off after reading a bit of the play. It wasn't for long, however. Moira soon arrived to take my laundry away and provide me with some more mint. Since I didn't really feel like walking around the abbey in my nightgown in the middle of the day, I was stuck in my dormitory. This would usually suit me just fine, although with nothing but a play I'd had my fill of to read, I soon became restless. Luckily, I eventually had a knock on the door. "Are you awake, dearie?" "Yes, please come in." "Moira told me you were still feeling a little under the weather, so I brought you some sage water." "Oh, how lovely, thank you." Charity set a pitcher and mug down on the small reading desk and sat down in the little chair. She poured a generous amount of the drink into the mug and handed it to me, which I accepted gracefully. Gratefully. "This is very soothing. I've always sworn by it myself. Drink it once a night. Would be dead without it, I reckon." "Really? Maybe, maybe not, but I wouldn't take the chance and stop now, would you?" "No, I suppose not. Darcy isn't half clever with plants. Could well be that she's discovered a way to grow sage that'll make us last forever. Immortality. Well, when we're all over 100 years old, we'll know who to thank, won't we?" Charity chuckled and wagged a finger at me. "Careful now, I might not be as far off from that age as I look." "You don't look a day over 30, Sister Charity." I couldn't help but feel jovial around Charity. We had barely spoken, but there was an aura of kindness and warmth around her that I could sense immediately. To be honest, I think a lot of the sisters do have that aura of kindness. Namely, I would say, Charity and Darcy and Adela, especially Adela. But I guess Hedwig is still kind of stuck in her mind. "Ooh, watch it, cheeky. Has Flora been putting you up to flattery like that?" "No, actually. Flora and I haven't spoken all that much yet, I'm afraid. She doesn't speak much at all to anyone, until she suddenly won't shut it. Come with her youth, I suppose." "What were you like at her age?" "Much the same as I am now, I believe. I was in that cell the entire time." "Oh, of course, stupid me. Well, you're remarkably well behaved for someone who hasn't spent any time around people. That much I can tell. Aside from all that fainting and puking, who hasn't fainted and puked around here?" "You got everyone good last night with that little prank. I'm surprised Catherine didn't keel over." "We're a fragile bunch. Nobody here will judge you for that. And if they do, well, let her who hasn't passed out in the Misericorde cast the first stone." I've been meaning to ask, what actually happens in there? Finally, we get to hear what happens in the Misericorde. You know what a Misericorde is, yes? I assume I do. Based on what Hedwig said about how Misericordes are used during special occasions, and I guess it's kind of like a room where nuns or the sisters get to live their life outside of the 10 Commandments for a while, something like that. In theory, I know the rules of Saint Benedict are less stringently adhered to in there. That's right. You can have four-legged meat in there if you fancy. It's mostly for guests who aren't to be expected to follow the rules, but we get so few visitors, it's more of a little clubhouse for us. I see. You're welcome to pop in sometime, as long as there's room. It isn't a den of sin or anything of the like. It's just a touch more relaxed. Mostly the girls play chess and complain about the superior. Oh, how much like a true workplace. She let out a hearty laugh and leaned over to flick my arm. I smiled back. I didn't want to get into an argument with Sister Charity of all people, especially when this was the first time we'd really spent any time together. I would like to stop in, to be sure. Only half the nuns can be in there at any given time, so let me or Marta know ahead of time if you do want to hang out. It's not a problem usually, but I do hate having to kick anyone out. Of course, where does the other half usually spend their leisure time in the evenings? Well, we've all got our own occupations, haven't we? Darcy's got her little projects, Margaret likes to go on wonders. Besides, it's not like the Misericorde is the only place we're allowed to relax. It's just the only place we can relax and have a spot of lamb to boot. What do you like to do? Well, Sister Marta and I will often sit in a cloister with some wine and gossip the evening away. There's a few wooden chairs down there. It's lovely on summer nights. That sounds restorative. Not half. When the moon's high, you hardly need a torch to see. The stars are lovely to watch. I'll have to try that sometime as well. You'd be more than welcome to join us, I'm sure. Although I'd worry we'd bore you to death with our old lady chatter. Really, I didn't really think that they were that old. In fact, Charity seems quite young herself. I'm not much of a conversationalist myself, as I'm sure you'd noticed. You're better at it than Sister Angela. That's all that really matters. Well, it's alright, girl. Spit it out. She's rather mean-spirited, isn't she? Charity started laughing heartily. Goodness gracious, that's the kindest things anyone said about her in recent memory. Well, Sister Angela is a creep and a busybody. A creep? If she's been bullying you, come to me. I'll sort her out for you. We haven't had any run-ins that dramatic, I promise you. Well, regardless, that offer is on the table. She was a right terror to Adela when she first showed up. Flora as well, for that matter. Though Flora might have brought that on herself just a little. I snorted laughing into my sage water. Just a little? Thank you, Sister Charity. I will keep that in mind. There was a knock on the door. Charity held up a hand to stop me from getting up myself and stood to open it herself. Oh, speak of the devil! Sister Angela was standing on the threshold, looking particularly icy. Speak of the devil. Hello, Sister Charity. My ears were burning. How long were you standing there listening, you gangly creep? Not long. Your voice just happens to carry, and it would be rude of me to interrupt. Sorry, Angela. Don't you dare apologize, Hedwig. I've seen the way Angela treats you, and I know the way she treats all kinds. You have nothing to be sorry about. The firmest I've been with Sister Hedwig is admonishing her for running in the halls. Is she, for some reason, exempt from the rules? Oh, don't give me that. You've been staring daggers at her ever since luncheon yesterday. You are imagining things. I wouldn't be the only one. Have you found Catherine's cat yet? Well, I'm off. Oh no. Even Charity is in a bad mood because of Angela, but at the same time, I feel like Angela might just be misunderstood. And you know when you're in that situation when it's really just Angela versus the other sisters, Angela is always going to have the losing... She's always going to be at the losing end here. It's sad for Angela, I'm afraid. It was pleasant chatting with you, Hedwig. I'm off to see Darcy. I have some questions about Nectar for her. Angela sneered as Charity pushed past her into the hallway, but held off from saying anything in return. She didn't speak to me either. Instead, she simply dumped a pile of clothes, fresh clothes, onto the dormitory floor and then turned to leave. Thank you. She did not respond. I carried the embarrassment of the encounter around with me for the rest of the afternoon. In the hour or two I had free before supper, I wandered the halls and exchanged pleasantries with anyone who passed me by, but I was preoccupied. Supper tasted like Ash, why did I feel so wretched, given that Charity had been completely correct? Angela had treated me horribly in my brief time within her reach. There was no denying it. From the way everyone else spoke of her, it sounded like I was not the sole target of her ire either. I deserved it. No, why? The suffering Angela seemed intent on inflicting upon me felt like appropriate punishment for all of my little sins. In fact, if that had been all I had to endure, I might say that I had gotten off lightly. An anchorite or anchoress does not break her vow. It just never happens. As I spooned my meal into my mouth, I thought about these words. Ego. I will even appoint over you terror, consumption, and the burning ague that shall consume the eyes and cause sorrow of heart. What? I was positively awash in sorrow. Maybe that's what is said of you when you break your vow as the anchoress or anchorite. I was terrified beyond reckoning, and I was wrecked with a mysterious illness, one that did not seem to be life-threatening, but enhanced my sorrows and fears thrice over. I was being punished. For the next few days, I completed my task in silence and wandered the halls in a daze. I accepted my due. At night, the halls echoed with that familiar, incessant scratching. Oh no, it's the scratching again. I would stand at the end of my old hallway, torn between returning to the comfort of my cell and fear of the demonic symbol in the walls behind it. I must apologize. I don't remember anything worth noting for a little while after that. Excuse me? I'm very sorry, What happened? My stupor lasted for several days. The superior eventually pulled me into her office and gently asked if I'd made any progress. I hadn't, of course, which meant that the rest of the conversation was decidedly less gentle. Hedwig, I'm sure that I don't need to impress the importance of your tasks upon you again. No, not at all. It's just... the path forward seems exceedingly simple to me. You hadn't even breached the topic with Catherine I. How exactly do I do that without giving the entire thing away? I would have expected that by now you would have been able to ingratiate yourself to the sisters. Can you really think of no way to elegantly approach the subject? Not that easy. Of course it won't be easy. Speaking of the dead never is. But surely you can come up with a way to be elegant about it. I think you are vastly overestimating my social abilities. It's hardly been a week. I don't mean to be too brutish, but you haven't been drawn and quartered by any conspirators, have you? You're not suspected of any ulterior motives, I'm certain of it. All the more reason that starting to press now feels so difficult. The superior sighed deeply. Let's walk through things together. James told you Catherine could vouch for him regarding his traveling cloak. I imagine there's a way to confirm this without revealing too much. Yeah, I think so too. How? I suppose you could ask about Catherine I generally. Respectfully, of course. And then you could, I don't know, mention you heard something about the cloaked villain arriving that morning. It is better than nothing. It sounds like you've thought about this. Maybe you should ask her? You're her superior, after all. I am your superior as well. Of course, I didn't mean... and I could not ask her for that precise reason. I am in charge of this place, and therefore, everyone has their guard up around me. That doesn't make any sense. It is the way of the world. Being in charge is often more work than being charged. It is exhausting. But they'll trust me? I don't think anyone here would confide in me so readily. It is more likely they would speak to you openly, yes. Or at the very least, they may be less inclined to choose every word so carefully. I just don't know. Hedwig, you met James. You saw his suffering. I did. And perhaps they have not shown it, but the sisters are suffering as well. Bringing the truth to light will help to heal everyone. It will fix everything. Well, not the accused. I just want the truth. If the sisters are keeping secrets, it could well be that they are hiding the truth out of fear rather than malice. The cloud must be lifted, for everyone's sake and for Catherine II's. I wish people would stop calling her that. It doesn't feel right. Catherine II? I assure you I mean it with the utmost affection. She took it wholeheartedly. Her and Catherine I, they played some sort of game for it. It was a series of chess games, if I recall. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised at this point. It is an exceedingly popular game. It's not just for children, if that's your apprehension. I wouldn't say I have apprehension. I mostly just find myself frustrated by its use as a sort of language all on its own. I think I was expecting that years and years of reading scriptures would have been enough to prepare me for speaking in an abbey. Interesting. You know, I actually find it surprising none of the books you had in your cell mentioned chess. It feels very old to me. There's so much written about it. As you've pointed out, it weaves through every conversation. I've known about it my whole life. It's very frustrating. It's more than just chess. I don't feel like I'm relating to these women at all. What if I taught you? What? Chess. Would you like to learn how to play? I wouldn't want to impose. That's a very diplomatic way of going about it to say that, no, I don't want to play chess. Don't be silly. It's a game. It's not an imposition in the slightest. Besides, if it'll help you build your confidence up somewhat. The superior got up from her seat and walked over to a shelf in the corner, retrieving a large wooden box. She heaved it onto her desk and opened the clasps, revealing an impressively polished chessboard. She carefully laid this board on the desk and beckoned me to bring my chair closer. She began removing beautifully carved pieces from the box and placed them on the board. Some were brilliant white and others were tinted with a red hue. Ivory. Aren't they lovely? They're incredible. Now these common ones, that's right, the smaller ones, these are the pawns. They get lined up in the front like this. They look a bit like thimbles. They do, don't they? Line them up in a row here. What does the one on the horse do? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to acquaint you with the most important pieces first. This one here is the king. I will spare you the details of my first game. Needless to say, I did quite terribly, although not for lack of trying. I just couldn't quite wrap my head around it. It was interesting, though. It made me realize that I couldn't remember playing any games with anyone else before. Had little rituals I performed in my cell that I suppose you might consider games. I would commit the words I was studying closely through that Tio Divina, and then see if I could make those passages and phrases again with words I wrote while transcribing new Bibles. What? Does that not count as a game? I will agree that it is different. You can play a game by yourself, but it's hard to consider that competition. The spirit of the whole endeavor is something different entirely. I sound just like Sister Adela, don't I? Hehe. My. At the very least, playing chess with the superior was enlightening. I finally grasped why playing so-and-so moves ahead was such a helpful phrase. Oh, I really see a lot of similarities between Misericorde and Umineko, which really makes me think and also approach things differently. Unfortunately, I could barely think through the move I was making, let alone what I'd do in the future. I believe that is checkmate. Ah, so it's over? Don't be discouraged, it was your first game. You did admirably considering. Thank you. I am more than happy to play with you more in future if you like. But promise me you will ask Catherine about James's cloak, one way or another. You made a promise to him, after all. And I think both of us have an unspoken promise to keep for Catherine, the second's sake, don't you think? I will make sure to speak with Sister Catherine. Good girl. I will summon you again in a few days' time. She had been gesturing with me, my defeated king piece, throughout this exchange. With a flick of the wrist, she placed it back in the sturdy box along with the other pieces. I stood up to leave and bowed my head. Thank you, Your Reverence. Reverence. Now, we spoke of this. Yes, of course. Until next time, Superior. She nodded and returned to tidying up the chessboard. I left the room. It was mid-afternoon. I remember the sky looking cloudier than ever, as if the fog I had seen surrounding Tor had encroached around the abbey itself. What a strange place this is, I had promised the Superior I would speak to Catherine, but I admit that I was reluctant to run straight to her all the same. If she came to me, she came to me. After all, I would need to bring the topic up naturally. It was no use chasing her down. Running away from difficult conversations, huh, Hedwig? I decided to clear my head with a stroll through the gardens. My stupor had not cleared completely, but I at least had the energy and desire to be amongst the flowers. It was a reassuring feeling. It had been a few days since I had felt the capacity to want. Even with gray skies above, the garden was a jewel. The flowers were fewer than I imagined they might be in spring, but nonetheless, the bushes, hedges, and herbs were a welcome and inviting sight. I heard rustling up ahead. Rustling? A cat? To my delight, a black cat eventually emerged from the bushes. Oh, it really is a cat. Careful, Hedwig. It looked at me briefly with its big, moony eyes for a moment. I forgot all of my troubles. Oh, look at it. So cute. So cute. I stepped forward to coo at it. It looked at me inquisitively. But a sudden sound from the bushes startled the poor thing. It scampered away, leaving me somewhat disappointed. Well, now we finally know there is a cat. Catherine's cat? Aww. A figure emerged through the bushes next to me. Sister Angela? Oh, she looks so disheveled. Did you see it? The cat? No, the cow. She looked entirely ridiculous. There were twigs sticking out of her hood from her attempt to squeeze through the bushes, and she was breathing heavily. I suppose she must have been chasing the cat for quite some time. Of course I mean a cat. Oh, yes. Which way did it go? It sort of scurried off that way. I gestured towards the edge of the path. I was trying not to giggle at Angela's misfortune, especially given that thinking about the animosity between us had put me in a daze for half a week. I see. He glanced in the direction I had indicated, then sighed and stood up straight. If you find another opportunity, do try to seize it. Cats have no business here at the Abbey. Why not? Does it matter? I know you're not used to being outside of your cell, but I would have thought obedience would not be so foreign a concept. Ooh. I am the prioress. That should be reason enough. Why do you hate me so much? Angela was busy removing debris from her hood and cowl, but I could see her arch her eyebrow higher, even higher than I was used to. I don't hate you. Well, it certainly seems like you do. Hedwig is really speaking her mind now. Maybe that talk with Adela actually did her some good. I should have perhaps saved this confrontational energy for questioning Catherine. But seeing Angela so out of sorts, I must admit, urged me to act on the feelings that had been brewing inside me for the past several days. That's funny. You know, I could ask you the same question. I seem to recall that I walked in on you being incredibly childish in your estimation of me. That was Charity. She egged you on. Don't be pathetic. Own your words. Oh, Angela. To be honest, I really don't think Angela is a bad person, even though everyone in the Abbey seems to hate her. But part of it is because of Angela's own attitude. But maybe she just doesn't really know how to mingle with the other sisters. Or maybe she has her own moral ethics that she wants to live up to that the other sisters don't. And that's why there's there's tension between everyone. But I really don't think Angela is necessarily a bad person. You have been very cruel to me since we first met. When you ran straight into me. That was a mistake. Yes, one you have made no effort to correct, it seems. I seem to recall that you barreled into me later that same day. I don't hate you, Sister Hedwig. I simply find you tiresome. I am exhausted by what you represent. I wish you would believe me when I say I'm not after your job. I have no interest in running the Abbey. Or any Abbey, for that matter. Even if I did believe you, which I am not saying I do, that wouldn't comfort me much at all. Succession seems to be the superior's plan for you, even if she hasn't told you. Oh, misunderstandings after misunderstandings. I am the new chronicler, that's all. Yet you seem to leave your job quite early each day. I'm not a terribly prolific writer. Not yet. This was one of the first times Angela hadn't had a retort ready to fire back at me. I was so surprised it almost knocked me off balance as much as a piercing reply would have. Anyway, for my part, I don't hate you. I'm afraid of you, I think. That's good. That means you have not yet abandoned all respect for authority. How perfectly cruel of you to say. This is exactly what I mean when I ask, why do you hate me? And once again, I must say, I do not hate you. I hate your disregard for the natural order of things. Well, we could sit here and argue about this all day, about what the natural order of things would be. I'm not going to. I hate that once again, I have been saddled with unruly children to rear as my own, because the superior has no interest in doing it herself. I am not a child. You are a babe, but not 2 weeks out of the womb. You weren't alive in that cell, and choosing to break that seal is a grave sin all its own. By my estimation, you need my help more than anyone here. Then help me. I do not revel in my sins. I'm not proud of them. What help can you offer me beyond venom? Do you know what this place is, Hedwig? The Misericorde is not a normal monastery. Surely you've noticed, even with your complete lack of worldly experience. Of course, but this is the last stop before the gates of hell. What? Do you think all of the sisters here ended up in this ruin all of their own volition? Do you think there are an abundance of women in the world eager to take the veil and serve the Lord here? Make no mistake, you should be begging for my approval. You have emerged into a den of vipers, not a house of God. You shouldn't trust a word any of the sisters tell you. Such suspicious words. You should be wary of their intentions. Why, their behavior in the wake of the murder of one of their own should be evidence enough. I don't hate you, Sister Hedwig. I'm simply the only person here who cares enough not to lie to you. I do believe that, to be honest. I have high expectations of your behavior, that is all. You, at the very least, have the potential to serve God with humility and grace here on this hill. Not like the other lost women here. The criminals and the freaks. criminals. Were they actually criminals? Like, are they actually criminals that were turned to serve God in this monastery? Christ spoke highly of the prostitutes and tax collectors, only on the condition that they sinned no more. The sisters here, they believe they are owed salvation. If that is true, Sister Angela, why... Spit it out. Why are you here? Why indeed? And with that, she brushed the last twig out of her habit, peered down her nose at me one last time, and left. How perfectly bewildering that woman was to me. Forgive me for being cross, but to this day I find her treatment of me beguiling. I had spent days wondering, did I deserve this? Was Angela a conduit through which God could punish me for the sins Angela rightfully pointed out to me? I still wonder that. In my calmer moments, I acquiesced to the idea. In my lowest moments, I almost relished it. But the truth of the matter is, every time I was presented with her maddening ability to pinprick me, to always find something wrong with me. Oh my, I'm doing it now, aren't I? Ignore me, all is right with the world. I am back here in my cell where I belong. I deserve every bit of ire I am recounting to you. It's just that in retelling the story, I must inhabit a previous version of myself to properly describe how I felt. I don't like this. There are a lot of references to Hedwig's past self and whatnot, and it's still something I don't really quite understand yet. I will try my best not to let the past and the present bleed together too much in future. Angela huffed away after the cat. I decided I'd better head the opposite direction if I was to avoid any more unpleasantness. I walked back towards the rectory, the last of my mind's haze replaced with a burning indignance. I would not say I was in a good mood, but I was certainly more alert than I had been for some time. And here we are. Margaret and Catherine. I think I'm gonna end here for today, but so far, we learned a bit more about the Abbey, that's for sure, and definitely interacted a lot more with the other sisters. And Angela, too. I really don't hate Angela, I don't dislike her, but she definitely has a way with her words. Still, it's usually those kind of characters that you end up finding that they are more truthful than the rest. And what she said about freaks and criminals makes me wonder why these people are here. Are they really voluntarily serving God, or were they posted here? Do you guys know what I mean? I'm not entirely sure of how the rules of the Abbey works and how sisters come to be, but this is what I'm assuming. So that's interesting. It would make sense. There are a lot of different characters here, that's for sure. And probably they all have their own backstory that we will come to learn of later on. Not now, but later on for sure. The other thing I wanted to say was, maybe I'm harping on this too much, but I do think that the structure of the Abbey is somewhat interesting and maybe something I will keep in mind. And also the fact that this episode, Hedwig found black cloth snagged on the branches outside the Abbey. It could literally mean anything. I don't know why she connected it to the ghost she saw, but it really could be anything. And that's still kind of terrifying because I don't know. It could be anything, really. I'm gonna end it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!